how many of you watching this or listening to this kind of know what to do to, if you fall out of shape, if you get into a rut and you start eating badly and maybe you're not working out as much, and you put on some weight and now you want to get back into the shape you were in before. How many of you sort of like have the know-how, right? Like maybe you're not experts, but you know sort of which food choices to make, which ones are better or not, if you were to go to the gym on your own without a trainer or without any assistance, you could probably do an okay workout. It might not be optimal. It might not be, the ideal perfect workout for fat burning or for muscle growth or for whatever your goal is, but it would be okay and you could do it. But there's just something else in the way. Something prevents you. Maybe you have a bunch of false starts where you hit it real hard and do it real well for a week or two or three and then fall off. Or maybe you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. In which case I sort of use some of my psychology skill set to help understand what might be underlying that, because it's not a knowledge deficit, right? It's something else. And sometimes it has to do with people's self-perceptions or their narratives about who they are and who they aren't, or about what they deserve and what they don't. Sometimes it's related to past experiences. Sometimes, and this is why I do an integrated performance coach and don't specialize in one single area, is it's not uncommon that problems in one area are directly related to something in a different area. Thriving podcast, where we celebrate the lives of those who have overcome great adversity, and we examine the tools and techniques by which people create lives that feel like thriving. I'm your host, Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, and today I wanted to address a question that I get fairly often in this line of work. And the question is, what does an integrated performance coach do? I get that question in various shades or various flavors. I've had some of my psychology and therapist friends ask me what's the difference between a coach and a therapist. I've had people ask me what does a coach do, and specifically what does an integrated performance coach do. So I thought I would address that today, talk a little bit about what I do as a coach, how my work differs from what I have done in the past as a psychotherapist or as a personal trainer, and maybe talk to you a little bit about how I've organized my practice and set up my business and working on my website. It's getting there. You can access it if you want to, but but I'm still building it, and it's a work in progress, so we can work on it. But so I thought that's what we would get into today and help you understand what a coach does. So put very simply, I would say the job of a coach is to help people achieve and realize their greatest selves, to create the best version of themselves. Whether that's professionally, to achieve the goals they want professionally, whether that's physically in terms of their physical health and fitness and well-being, whether that's financially or interpersonally or athletically. I work with competitive athletes as well. Sometimes achieving their best self starts with helping them identify goals and set goals. In fact, when it comes to goal setting, I would say that people I work with fall into one of two categories. One category would be folks who are very, very clear on their goals. I work with a competitive wrestler. She wanted to compete in and win states, right? So, she had a wrestling coach. She had a fitness and conditioning coach. And even though I'm qualified in that area, I left it alone because she has somebody in that area. And I worked with her on mindset and on what it means to be a champion, what it means to win a title, what it doesn't mean for her, and things of that sort. But for her, the goal was very simple. For an executive who is perhaps a middle tier or even a high level executive at a company and wants to be in the C-suite, right? Wants to become a CFO or CEO. There's mindset coaching around that with entrepreneurs who want to grow their business to a certain level. Those are areas where the goals are fairly clear. I can help with defining those goals a little bit, maybe setting time boundaries on them, right? We want to achieve X, Y, or Z by such and such a date. I can help quantify and make those goals measurable so that we have a good sense of whether we've achieved them or not, right? That comes up a lot in fitness kinds of areas, physical fitness, right? The most common goal I hear is, well, I want to lose weight. Well, what does that mean, right? How much weight, by when, why, so on and so forth. The other category, the other group of people that I work with are people who sometimes don't quite know what their goal is. Sometimes people will come in and say, well, I want to do better at X, Y, or Z, without a real clear idea of what it means to do better at X, Y, or Z. People come in and say, I need to learn to manage my money better. Well, what does that mean, right? Are you talking about retirement accounts? Are you talking about investing in ways that will give you a certain amount of return? Are you talking about getting out of debt? Are you talking about budgeting so that you don't have lots of extraneous expenses? So with the second category, so the first category of people, the goals are fairly well defined. I can help refine them a little bit, but then it's my job to get you from here to there. With the other category of folks, my job starts with helping you figure out what it is. And this can be trickier than it sounds. There are instances where people think they want one thing, but as we dig into it, maybe that's not actually what they want. So I can give you an example. I can give you a few examples, but for example, when it comes to fitness, the most common thing I hear from people is I want to lose weight. I want to lose 5 pounds. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose whatever it is. And very frequently, very often, when I dig into it with people, many of them actually don't want to lose weight necessarily. What they want to lose is body fat. If I present them with the idea of, hypothetically, if the scale didn't move at all, but you dropped a pant size or a dress size, would you be happy? If the answer to that is yes, then what they're looking for isn't necessarily weight loss, because weight loss is measured on the scale. Body composition can be measured through taking body fat measurements and such, or you can measure somebody's physical being with a tape measure or clothes sizes and things of that nature. Those are less precise measurements, but they are still measurements. These get tricky, and they get tricky because we believe people who come to me and say they want to lose weight, for example. The other one that happens a lot is people saying they want to save money. And really what they want to do is build wealth. Savings is a piece of building wealth, but having your money invested in things that return interest to you, either like stocks or bonds, or investments in collectibles or other things that appreciate in assets. Those are part of wealth building also, that are different from savings. So people saying they need to save more money is not always actually what they're asking for. So I have to help them clarify in their mind what it is they need, because the outcomes and the processes to get there will be different. The process of losing weight is very different from the process of losing body fat and getting more lean. And weight loss as a goal specifically, requires, very often it's people like competitors, wrestlers, or MMA fighters, for example, where their sport functions in weight classes where they really need to cut weight or lose weight in order to compete. Most average people that I meet who are interested in health and looking good and things of that sort really would like to burn fat and be more lean, and aren't as concerned about the actual number on the scale. And that's important because weight loss typically requires some suffering. It has to do with calorie deficit, where it's possible to get lean with less restriction in your lifestyle. So I try to make sure that people know what they want. The other problem with some goals, for example, is people don't always want them for themselves. So very often with the weight loss goal as an example, when I start to ask people why they want that goal, we eventually get to a place where, well, there's this social norm about being thin is better, right? Thin is, your self-worth improves, your self-confidence improves, if you're thin. The problem is that there's plenty of research and plenty of anecdotal evidence, but also, real studies, scientific research demonstrating that goals lacking in intrinsic value, goals that are not important to you, are not, if they're achievable, they're not going to be sustainable. Lowering your body weight requires a lot of restriction in your lifestyle. And that kind of restriction in your lifestyle is hard to maintain if the goal isn't personally important to you. If it's to satisfy a social norm or some idea that thin people are better, it's not going to be worth all of the sacrifice in the long run. So it's important to be clear about those goals. Now, if the goal really is to lose weight, that's fine. I just help people clarify that. Same thing with money. A lot of times people think they want money or wealth for status reasons, but status reasons are typically about impressing other people or how other people perceive you. And again, the sort of work and effort and lifestyle restriction required to achieve that kind of wealth or that appearance of wealth is often not worth the payoff in the end if the goal is not intrinsic. If the goal is to accumulate wealth to have a better standard of living, an easier lifestyle where you're less restricted due to financial issues, or to accumulate wealth that you can then pass down to your children because you didn't get to inherit from previous generations, those are typically more motivating, more sustainable types of goals. So that's my first piece when I work with a client, is trying to sort out what the goals are. And if the goals are clear, then we start to develop a plan to achieve those goals. If the goals are a little muddier, a little less clear, then I help them etch out the finer points of those goals and figure out what we want for those goals. What I tend to do next as a coach is figure out what's in the way of achieving those goals. Right? Well, why hasn't that person achieved this goal without me on their own? And sometimes that's due to a skill deficit or a knowledge deficit. And sometimes it's due to something bigger, right? So for example, I can tell you that in previous generations prior to mine, people had pretty poor knowledge of nutrition. Fitness was not a widespread, common sort of idea as it is today. People didn't necessarily belong to gyms or get regular workouts. And like I said, nutrition knowledge was spotty. And so sometimes for folks, if their health has been a problem and they want to be in better physical condition, a little bit of knowledge about good nutrition, a little bit of knowledge about some basic movement and exercise is all they need to achieve their goal. And in which case I try to help provide that knowledge. If it's the knowledge is outside my area of expertise, then I'll find a referral and I'll refer them to somebody who does have that area. But very often I find that the thing that's in the way for a lot of people is not necessarily a knowledge deficit. Um, how many of you watching this or listening to this kind of know what to do to, if you fall out of shape, if you get into a rut and you start eating badly and maybe you're not working out as much, and you put on some weight and now you want to get back into the shape you were in before? How many of you sort of like have the know-how, right? Like maybe you're not experts, but you know sort of which food choices to make, which ones are better or not, if you were to go to the gym on your own without a trainer or without any assistance, you could probably do an okay workout. It might not be optimal. It might not be, the ideal perfect workout for fat burning or for muscle growth or for whatever your goal is, but it would be okay and you could do it. But there's just something else in the way. Something prevents you. Maybe you have a bunch of false starts where you hit it real hard and do it real well for a week or two or three and then fall off. Or maybe you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. In which case I sort of use some of my psychology skill set to help understand what might be underlying that, because it's not a knowledge deficit, right? It's something else. And sometimes it has to do with people's self-perceptions or their narratives about who they are and who they aren't, or about what they deserve and what they don't. Sometimes it's related to past experiences. Sometimes, and this is why I do an integrated performance coach and don't specialize in one single area, is it's not uncommon that problems in one area are directly related to something in a different area, right? There's a strong link between past trauma or adversity and financial difficulties. Some people have a real hard time becoming disciplined with money because of past experiences that have taught them that they either don't deserve wealth, or that that's not their identity, that they're not a person who accumulates wealth, or it's out of line with how they perceive themselves. And so the work I do with these folks ends up revolving more around their self-image and their identity, and the way they care for themselves, than it does around the nuts and bolts of how to make a budget, or put money into savings, or how to invest, or things of that sort. Same thing with fitness, right? A lot of times helping people understand why they don't treat themselves like a priority, or why maybe they put others' needs ahead of theirs, becomes more central to the work than how to design a fitness program, or how to perform a proper squat or a proper push-up or anything of that sort. So then that begs the question, that's where I get the question from a lot of my other colleagues about, well, what's the difference between therapy and coaching? And what I would say is that there can be a lot of overlap between coaching and therapy. There doesn't have to be. There can be a clear line. But I think if you watched 100 therapists work and watched 100 coaches work, you would see a lot of overlap. In this instance, I think a lot of my therapy colleagues and psychology colleagues kind of make an assumption that it's because coaches are diving into the domain of the therapist. But I'm not. I actually suspect it's, as somebody who's worked in both, I think it's the other way around. Technically, what a therapist does is, a therapist, and this is sort of as defined over the last, I don't know how long, couple of decades, based on the business of medicine and insurance companies and managed care. What insurance companies pay therapists for, when you have that coverage, is to take somebody who has a diagnosable mental health condition, a depression, or an anxiety, or a PTSD, and helps them remit the symptoms, treat the condition to the point where they are no longer influenced or inhibited or impaired from their symptoms, bringing them back to baseline, the way a medical doctor would treat your ailments and illnesses and get rid of them. Depending on where you work, I've worked in places where doing more than that and helping people with their interpersonal relationships, helping people improve their financial status, helping people who've overcome trauma start to like thrive and create meaning in their lives. I've worked in places where that was accepted, but very often it had to be done under the banner of a diagnosis, which is questionable. If the person no longer has symptoms or meets the criteria, can you still give them the diagnosis? And so I would say in those areas, therapists are sort of moving into the domain of the coach. I'm not mad at them at that. For that, I think that's fine. I think if you're a client and you're getting help, then great, you're getting help. As a coach, what I do is I help people achieve the lives they want. And that can be helping them with resolving interpersonal conflict in their relationships or in their family lives. It could be with helping them raise their performance in their professional lives and setting them up for higher level performance at executive levels in their career. It could be helping athletes with mindset coaching to shave seconds off their time or win a meet or a match. I help people. I personally, in addition to my having a PhD in psychology, I also have a personal trainer certification. I've been a certified personal trainer since 1997, I think. So I do help people with fitness programs when they need it. But very often, the fitness program is secondary to helping them deal with what's in the way of just getting to the gym or taking care of themselves. Or I help people with financial counseling. I am working on a financial coaching certification, but I'm qualified to help. I'm supposed to be accruing hours doing that. So I have tools and techniques for helping folks. But again, sometimes it is the education of how do you work a budget and how do you live that way and how does that look? And turning a budget, for example, from something restrictive into something empowering. But very often it's the person has the knowledge about how to budget. And what I'm dealing with is what their relationship to money is and why it is that they feel like they shouldn't hold it or can't hold on to it. Maybe they have that underlying belief that money is the root of all evil or something of that sort. And it's helping them come to grips with beliefs and attitudes and past experiences that are preventing them from fulfilling the life they want in the present. What I don't do anymore, I'm qualified, I could do it, but what I choose not to do anymore is treat symptoms and diagnoses. I don't work as a therapist, mostly because doing so requires a lot of extra work with insurance companies and medical type organizations. And there's a lot of rules and liabilities around things like HIPAA and privacy and that are, I adhere to very rigid privacy standards in my coaching practice. They're just not governed the way the medical things are. And I just chose to leave that environment to help people in this environment. Integrated performance coaching is a term that I came up with. And I came up with that term to describe the idea that, so I am trained, I have training in management and marketing. I have a bachelor's degree in marketing. I've been a manager both in health clubs and in the US military. I've been a field grade officer. I've been I have a PhD in psychology. I've worked as a psychologist. I've done testing and assessment. I've done psychotherapy. I've done forensic psychology, working with the court system. I've been a certified personal trainer since 1997. I've worked with people of all sorts, from competitive athletes to very injured or infirmed people, and helping them move better and alleviate aches and pains and improve their fitness and overall health. I'm currently in school in a culinary arts program, learning how to really cook delicious, healthy meals to help people with nutrition and help people provide for themselves in that way. As I said before, I have quite a bit of experience with financial counseling, not financial management. I don't sell specific products. I won't put you in a particular fund or anything of that sort. If you want a financial manager, I can refer you. I have a network. But what I do is work with the basics of how to manage money and how to create a budget, how to stick to a budget, how to plan for retirement, how to deal with tax laws, things of that sort, and also the emotional or interpersonal or social relationship issues that can get in the way of creating the financial future you want. So those are the things that I do as a practice. The way I have my practice set up is I try to, it's important that I earn a living, and I believe that I have expertise and training that are worth, it's reasonable to charge for them. I went through a lot of work and a lot of expenditure myself to achieve credentials and to receive training. But I also feel like this information is really important, and I don't want to price it out for people who are maybe unable, who are struggling and unable to afford it. So I sort of have 3 tiers in my practice. The first tier is information and content that I make available for free. And I do that through this podcast. I also do this through my blog called What the Fuck Am I Doing? Where I use my own life's mistakes and life's errors to sort of learn lessons about how to do things differently. And I try to put out quality content free of charge so that everybody has some access to it. The second tier, it has to do with, I said earlier that sometimes what folks need from me or from another coach is a knowledge, they need knowledge, what they're lacking. They have a deficit in the knowledge area. So I try to make knowledge content very affordable for sale on my website. So for example, I have started recording instructional cooking videos, making certain recipes that are tasty and simple and healthy. And those are available on my website for download for, few less than $5 each. They're like $4.99 each, to try to make them accessible to people who don't necessarily need to pay me an hourly coaching fee to learn to cook themselves some healthy meals or to cook for their family differently. Same thing with basic nutrition. I have courses on basic nutrition. I have courses on basic fitness. I'm going to be coming out with a course on basic finance. I'm going to be coming out with a course on mindset. And those are also going to be affordable. I don't know what the price point will be on them just yet, but it'll probably be somewhere between the $5 and $25 mark, so that they're readily accessible to people. Then for people who have more difficulty and need some one-on-one help with creating their goals or defining their goals and achieving their goals, because the other materials that that they have access to just haven't gotten them to where they want to be, then I can engage in a coaching relationship with them, and coaching varies in price depending on if you do it hourly or I sell packages of 10. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts. Anybody who's interested can message me or look on my website and we can talk about pricing for that. But I usually try to get a sense of what the person needs, big picture, long term, and create a fair proposal for coaching. But that's how I work my practice. I have decent credentials. I alluded to that before. The thing about, if you follow my educational and occupational career, what you'll find is that everything I've studied or learned is about helping and serving other people. And while it might look a little disjointed to some people, I see a common theme. So I got a bachelor's degree in marketing and public relations in 1995. I worked in that field, not for very long, but for not long enough to get some experience. Then I became a certified personal trainer in 1997, 1998. I worked in that field full time. I have some management experience leading teams in the fitness industry. And I've had personal training certifications through the American Council on Exercise. I'm currently certified through the National Association of Sports Medicine, NASM. Through NASM, I also had a certification. They don't have it anymore. I guess technically I'm still certified, but they don't really have the credential anymore, but it was called a Certified Sports Fitness Specialist. And so I worked with athletes and had that credential. Then I went back to school and got a master's degree and then a doctorate in counseling and psychology, and worked as a psychotherapist, both in the military and as a civilian. And I'm currently studying for a financial coaching credential and attending school to get an associate's degree in culinary arts. To me, these things are all linked and all connected, because very often what you find is somebody who's struggling in one area, you'll find evidence of difficulty or struggle in other areas too. Somebody who's having a hard time moving up their career ladder or managing their funds well might also have difficulty at home with a spouse or a partner or a child. Somebody who's having a hard time managing their money and living according to a budget might also be struggling to prioritize their health and wellness, and might not be eating well or exercising regularly or things of that sort. And so as an integrated performance coach, the idea is that I can help folks wherever the problems lie. So if I'm working with a competitive athlete, a D1, collegiate athlete, or an Olympic athlete who's coming to me for mindset coaching, and they're trying to optimize their sports performance, right? Or an MMA fighter or somebody like that. And I find out that they're having lots of conflict at home with their spouse or with their child. I can help them manage the conflict interpersonally, right? Having a master's degree and a PhD in psychology and in therapy and counseling. I can help them manage that conflict so that it's no longer in the way of their athletic performance. Or if they are, for example, struggling athletically because they're preoccupied due to financial difficulties, right? As somebody who's getting an education as a financial coach and who has quite a bit of experience in education in personal finance, I can help them better manage their financial situation so that it is less in the way of their athletic performance. Same thing if I have working with an executive who is up for a big promotion, but now has whatever difficulty at home, or for example, is doing maybe really well at work, but is finding it hard to prioritize time for fitness. Having training in all these areas enables me to help folks in a broad, integrated, though not segregated, integrated, holistic way. Lastly, in the areas where I don't have personal training or credentials, I try to maintain a pretty good network. So if I work with somebody who needs help in an area where I don't have the expertise, I will talk to them about either referring them to a professional in that area with whom I have a relationship, or bringing that other professional in and creating sort of a team approach. So that's the short version of what I do as a integrated performance coach. That's how it differs from psychotherapy and maybe some other helping careers. I don't work with diagnoses. If somebody comes to me and their symptoms are mental health symptoms, depression, anxiety, are so severe that that's in the way of their goals, I'm going to refer them to a therapist. And then they can come back to me once the anxiety or depression or trauma is more under control. I have talked about how I have my practice set. So again, I try to make it so that there's aspects of what I do that are accessible for everyone. There are some content that's free. There's some content that I try to purposefully keep very affordable. And then obviously when people need more than that, we'll have a discussion. And some of that's when I do organizational consulting. For example, I work with organizations on culture and climate and keeping teams motivated and morale and things of that sort, leadership, management. I usually try to find out, what their organization looks like now, and then make a proposal with a cost associated for that. So that's how I work. I want to thank folks for the questions. Coming up, I'm going to address, I had a question about basic fitness and well-being. So I'll do a podcast that covers some of the basics of health and wellness. Not sure if I'll do two, maybe one on nutrition, one on fitness, or maybe one that sort of talks about the both, but that'll be coming up in the not too distant future. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and for listening to the podcast. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. The channel is Growth and Thriving LLC. The podcast audio version is available. It's the Growth and Thriving podcast, and that's available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on Google Podcasts. My website is www.growthandthriving.com, all spelled out, growthandthriving.com. You can access the podcast through there as well. My blog is called What the Fuck Am I Doing? And takes a lot of life lessons from mistakes I've made or learning opportunities I've had in the past. A lot of foul language, so maybe not for children or not for work. But I try to use some humor. I try to keep it very down to earth and funny if I can. And the website for that is www.whatthefkamidoing.com. And aside from that, keep looking out for new content, new material. There is a couple of cooking videos up on the website right now. I think I have one for garlic parmesan Brussels sprouts, which are delicious, even if you don't like Brussels sprouts. I have a cooking video up for how to make a braised chuck roast. There'll be one coming for a roasted chicken with potatoes. I'll be making a vegan, healthy vegan breakfast cookie. So check them out if you want. Please like the content, share it as widely as you can. I really appreciate that. Subscribe on YouTube or sign up for the website. And thank you so much for your time and your interest. Please feel free to comment with any suggestions, questions, comments you might have. But for right now, this is Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak saying, keep growing until you're thriving.